I'm Marjorie Tillman, and I need to tell you about the day my entire life cracked open like an egg. Messy, raw, and impossible to put back together. It started with a knock at my door. Just a soft knock, nothing threatening, nothing loud. The kind you almost miss if the TV's on or you're running water in the kitchen. But I heard it. And when I opened that door, standing on my porch was a woman I'd never seen before. Old, fragile, wrapped in a coat too heavy for the weather. Her eyes locked onto mine with a look that made my stomach drop. Not anger, not sadness, something worse. Desperation. She didn't say much. Didn't introduce herself, didn't apologize for showing up unannounced at my home on a Saturday afternoon when my husband had just stepped out to the hardware store. She simply reached into her coat with trembling fingers and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Yellow, worn, like it had been carried for years. "This is for your husband," she whispered. Her voice shook. "But you need to read it first." Then she turned around and walked away. Just like that. No explanation, no goodbye. I stood there holding that note, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Leon would be back any minute. I could hear his truck engine still humming in my mind from when he'd pulled out of the driveway. 10 minutes, he'd said. Maybe 15. I looked down at the paper in my hands. Part of me wanted to wait. To hand it to him unopened, to let him explain, to trust the man I'd spent 38 years of my life with, the man who'd never given me a single reason to doubt him. But that woman's face, that look in her eyes, she hadn't come here by accident. My fingers unfolded the note slowly like I was defusing a bomb. And when I read the first line, my knees went weak. "Leon, you can't run from the truth forever." I read it again, then again. My hands started shaking just like that old woman's had. 42 years, the note said. A secret buried for 42 years. Something about a truth Leon had been hiding. Something about someone named her who deserved to know what he'd done. I didn't understand. I couldn't breathe. Because my husband, my steady, dependable, kind-hearted Leon, had never kept secrets from me. Not big ones. Not the kind that required strangers showing up at your door with warnings written on old paper. Or so I thought. The sound of his truck rolling back into the driveway snapped me out of my daze. I heard the door slam, heard his boots on the gravel, heard him humming that old gospel tune he always hummed when he was in a good mood. And I realized in that moment, standing there with that note clutched in my hands, that I had a choice to make. I could pretend I never saw it, tuck it away, protect the life we'd built, or I could ask him and risk losing everything. Leon walked through the door with a smile on his face and a paper bag in his hand, completely unaware that the floor beneath our marriage had just disappeared. "Got the screws," he said, setting the bag on the counter. Then he looked at me, really looked at me. His smile faded. "Marge, baby, what's wrong?" I didn't say anything. I just handed him the note. And I watched my husband's face drain of every ounce of color as his eyes scanned the words. His hands started shaking, his breath caught, and for the first time in 38 years, I saw fear in Leon Tillman's eyes. Real fear. The kind that comes when the past finally catches up. "Marge," his voice cracked. "Where did you get this?"
Let me take you back so you understand who we were before everything fell apart. Leon and I met at a church picnic in 1987. I was 20 years old, fresh out of community college with a certificate in food service management. He was 23, working as a city bus driver, wearing a shirt that was too big for him and a smile that made my heart skip. We talked for 3 hours straight that day about nothing and everything. He told me he wanted to be the kind of man people could depend on. I told him I wanted a life that felt safe. We got married a year later in that same church. Our wedding was small, simple. Leon's mama cried through the whole ceremony. My daddy walked me down the aisle in his only suit, the one he wore to funerals and job interviews. We didn't have much money, but we had each other. And back then, that felt like enough. We built our life slowly, carefully. Leon drove his routes Monday through Friday, sometimes pulling double shifts to save up for our first house. I worked the morning shift at an elementary school cafeteria, serving sloppy joes and mashed potatoes to kids who called me Miss Marge. We saved every penny we could. 3 years into our marriage, I got pregnant with our first son, Terrell. Leon cried when I told him. Actually, cried. He held my belly and promised he'd be the best father a boy could ask for. And he kept that promise. When Terrell was born, Leon was the one who woke up for the midnight feedings. He changed diapers without complaining. He sang old Motown songs off-key until Terrell fell asleep on his chest. 2 years later, Winston came along. Our family felt complete. We weren't wealthy, we weren't fancy, but we were happy. Leon worked hard, I kept our home running. The boys grew up strong and smart. We went to church on Sundays, had barbecues in the backyard, and spent holidays with extended family. It was the kind of ordinary life people write country songs about. Leon retired from the bus company after 30 years. They gave him a plaque and a handshake. He started working part-time at the community center after that, fixing broken chairs and leaky faucets. He couldn't sit still. He needed to stay busy, stay useful. That's just who he was. By the time both our sons moved out, Terrell to Atlanta for a job in IT, Winston to Maryland for graduate school, Leon and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm. We were those couples you see at the grocery store holding hands in the cereal aisle. We finished each other's sentences. We knew how the other took their coffee. We'd grown old together in the best way possible. Or at least I thought we had. I never questioned Leon's past, never felt the need to. He told me about his life before me in bits and pieces over the years. He grew up poor in South Richmond. His father left when he was 12. His mama raised him and his 2 sisters on a housekeeper's salary. He worked odd jobs as a teenager to help with bills. He'd had a few girlfriends before me. Nothing serious. That's all I knew. That's all I thought I needed to know. Because Leon was present. He was mine. Every day for 38 years, that man woke up next to me and chose me again. He never stayed out late, never came home smelling like perfume, never gave me a reason to doubt where his heart was. I trusted him completely. Maybe that was my mistake. The afternoon that woman showed up at our door, Leon had been fixing the porch railing. It was loose, wobbling every time one of us leaned on it. He'd been talking about fixing it for weeks, and that Saturday morning he finally decided to do it. He kissed my forehead, grabbed his keys, and told me he'd be right back. "Just run into the hardware store for some screws, baby. 10 minutes tops." I told him to drive safe, went back to folding laundry in the living room. The TV was on, some old Western Leon liked. I wasn't really watching, just letting the sound fill the house so it didn't feel so quiet. That's when I heard the knock. Soft, hesitant, almost like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they wanted to be there. I looked through the peephole and saw her, an old woman, maybe late 70s. Her coat hung loose on her thin frame. Her hair was gray and pulled back into a bun. But it was her eyes that stopped me. Sharp, focused, like she'd been searching for this address for a long time. I opened the door. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. "Are you Marjorie Tillman?" she asked. Yes, ma'am. Her lips trembled. She reached into her coat, and for a second I thought about closing the door. But something in her expression, sadness maybe or regret, made me wait. She pulled out that note, held it toward me with shaking hands. This is for your husband, but you need to read it first. I took it. The paper felt fragile, like it might crumble if I held it too tight. Who are you? I asked, but she was already turning away, slowly, like every step hurt. Wait, I called after her. What is this about? She stopped at the edge of my driveway, didn't turn around. He'll know, and so will you. Then she disappeared around the corner. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the note in my hands. My name wasn't on it, just Leon's, written in neat, careful handwriting that belonged to someone who'd taken their time. I should have waited for him to come home, should have let him open it first. But I didn't. I unfolded the note right there in my doorway, and the words I read made my entire world tilt sideways. Leon, you can't run from the truth forever. I have been patient for 42 years, but secrets don't die just because we try to bury them. You owe me an explanation, and her. She deserves to know what you did. I read it 3 times, 4 times, trying to make sense of it. 42 years? That was before Leon and I even met, before Terrell, before Winston, before our life together. What truth? What secret? Who was her? And why now? Why after all this time? My chest felt tight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I heard Leon's truck pulling back into the driveway, and suddenly I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stand there holding proof that my husband had been hiding something from me for longer than I'd known him. He walked in humming, smiling, completely unaware. And I realized something that made my stomach turn.
Leon set the hardware store bag on the counter and turned to me with that easy smile I'd seen 1,000 times. But this time, it felt wrong, like I was looking at a stranger wearing my husband's face. "You all right, Marge?" he asked, his smile fading. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't answer, couldn't find the words. Instead, I just held out the note. He looked at it, then at me, then back at the note. "What's this?" he asked, but his voice had changed. Gone tight, guarded. "Read it," I said. He took it from my hands, slowly, like he already knew it was going to hurt. And when his eyes hit that first line, I watched everything about him change. His shoulders sagged, his jaw clenched. His breathing got shallow and quick, like he'd just run up a flight of stairs. The note trembled in his grip. I'd been married to this man for 38 years. I'd seen him happy, sad, angry, tired. I'd seen him cry when his mama passed. I'd seen him laugh until he couldn't breathe. But I had never, not once, seen him look like this. Terrified. "Leon," I whispered, "what is she talking about?" He didn't answer, just kept staring at those words like they might change if he looked long enough. "Leon," I said again, louder this time, "who gave this to me?" He finally looked up. His eyes were wet. "Who, Marge?" "An old woman. She came to the door right after you left. She told me to read it before you got back." His face went pale, actually pale, like all the blood had drained out of him. "What did she look like?" "Old, thin, wearing a blue coat. She didn't tell me her name. She just handed me this and walked away." Leon sat down hard in one of our kitchen chairs. The note slipped from his fingers onto the table. He covered his face with both hands. "Leon, you're scaring me," I said. My voice cracked. "What truth is she talking about? Who is her? What did you do?" He didn't speak for what felt like forever, just sat there with his head in his hands, breathing like he was trying not to fall apart. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were full of tears. "Marge," he said quietly, "I should have told you a long time ago." My heart dropped into my stomach. Told me what? He took a shaky breath, wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Before I met you, there was someone, a woman named Delilah." The name hung in the air between us. "Delilah," I repeated. He nodded. "Delilah Sharp. We were together for about 2 years. I was young, 21, 22. I thought she was the one." I sat down across from him. My legs felt weak. "What happened?" "She disappeared. Just gone. One day we were making plans for the future, talking about getting married, and the next day she was just gone. No note, no phone call, nothing. Her family wouldn't talk to me. Her friends didn't know anything. I searched for her, Marge. I looked everywhere, but it was like she'd vanished into thin air." I tried to process what he was telling me, tried to understand why this mattered now, decades later. "I don't understand," I said. "What does this have to do with that note?" Leon's hands were shaking on the table. "About 6 months after she disappeared, I heard a rumor. Just whispers, how people talk. Someone said Delilah had a baby, that she'd been pregnant when she left." My breath caught. "A baby?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face now. I tried to find out if it was true. I went to her mama's house, but she slammed the door in my face. I asked around, but nobody would tell me anything. And then he paused, swallowing hard. "Then I heard the baby was adopted, given away to some family out of state." "Was it yours?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "I don't know," he whispered. "I never knew for sure, but the timing, it could have been. And if it was, Marge, if there's a child out there who's mine, I never got to know them, never got to hold them, never got to be their father." I sat there in stunned silence. My husband, my Leon, had a whole piece of his life I knew nothing about, a piece that involved another woman, a missing child, and decades of unanswered questions. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked. My voice came out small, hurt. He reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled it back. "I was afraid," he said quickly. "Afraid you'd leave. Afraid you'd think I was damaged goods. When I met you, Marge, you were this bright, beautiful thing, and I was just broken. Still mourning Delilah, still wondering about that baby. I didn't want to burden you with my past. So you lied to me." "He didn't lie," he said quickly. "I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing, Leon." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "I know," he whispered. "I know it is. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to ask him how he could keep something this big from me for 38 years. But all I could do was sit there, numb, trying to make sense of the man I thought I knew. "The note says she deserves to know what you did. Who is she? The baby?" "I think so." "And what did you do, Leon? What is this woman accusing you of?" He shook his head. "I don't know. I swear to God, Marge, I don't know. I never did anything to Delilah. I loved her. When she left, it destroyed me, but I didn't do anything wrong." I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the man I'd built a life with wasn't capable of whatever that note was implying. But trust felt like a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. "If this baby exists," I said slowly, "if there's a child out there who's yours, we need to find them." Leon looked at me surprised. "Marge." "No," I said firmly. "Whatever happened 42 years ago, whatever Delilah did or didn't tell you, there's a person out there who might be your child, our family. And if someone's sending notes to our—" I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that old woman's face, heard her voice.
She deserves to know what you did. Leon tossed and turned beside me, but we didn't talk. What was there to say? Our whole marriage felt like it was sitting on shaky ground, and neither of us knew how to steady it. By Sunday morning, I'd made up my mind. I was going to find this child, if she existed, and I was going to get answers, not just for Leon, for me. Because I needed to know what I was dealing with, needed to know if my husband was the man I thought he was, or if I'd been living with a stranger for nearly 4 decades. After church, I called Miss Tilda. Tilda Hughes was a retired social worker from our congregation, 73 years old with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She'd spent 40 years tracking down lost relatives, helping families reconnect, untangling adoption records that most people wouldn't know how to start searching. If anyone could help me, it was her. "Marge?" she answered on the second ring. "Everything all right, baby?" "Miss Tilda, I need your help with something private." There was a pause, then, "Come over this afternoon. Don't bring Leon." I met her at her house at 2:00. She had sweet tea waiting and a notepad on our kitchen table. I told her everything. The note, Delilah Sharp, the baby that might exist, the 42 years of silence. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and steadied me. "You sure you want to open this door, Marge? Because once you do, you can't close it again." "I'm sure," I said, even though I wasn't sure of anything anymore. She nodded. "Give me a week." It took 5 days. Miss Tilda showed up at my door the following Friday with a manila folder under her arm. Leon was at the community center, so it was just us. She sat at my kitchen table and opened the folder carefully, like she was handling something fragile. "She found her," she said quietly. My heart stopped. "You did?" "Birth certificate, adoption records, everything. It took some digging. Adoption records from the 80s aren't easy to access, but I have connections, people who owe me favors." She slid a piece of paper across the table. I looked down and saw it. Birth certificate copy. Mother, Delilah Sharp. Father, not listed. Date of birth, August 14th, 1983. Child, female. My hands trembled as I picked it up. "She's real," I whispered. "She's real," Miss Tilda confirmed. "And there's more." She pulled out another document, adoption records. Adoptive parents, Charles and Denise Randall. Location, Richmond, Virginia. Child's name, Naomi Randall. "Naomi," I said softly, testing the name on my tongue. "She's 42 years old now," Miss Tilda said. "And Marge, she lives here, in Richmond, about 15 minutes from your house." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "She's been here this whole time?" "According to the records, she's worked at the community health office downtown for the past 8 years. The community health office. My stomach dropped. "I volunteered there. Twice a month, I helped organize their food pantry distributions. I'd been doing it for 3 years. "What does she look like?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Miss Tilda pulled out a photo, recent, printed from somewhere online, maybe a professional directory or social media. I looked at the picture and felt my world tilt. She looked like Leon. Same deep-set eyes, same strong jawline, same warm smile. It wasn't identical. She had softer features, lighter skin, like maybe Delilah had been fair-complexioned. But the resemblance was there, undeniable. And then it hit me. I knew her. "Oh my God," I breathed. "What?" Miss Tilda asked. "I know her. I've talked to her. We've had coffee together during pantry days. She's always so nice, so polite. She helped me carry boxes once when my back was acting up. Miss Tilda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Marge, are you okay? I wasn't okay. I was the opposite of okay. My husband's daughter, the child he never knew existed, had been right under my nose for 3 years. We'd smiled at each other, made small talk, shared stories about the weather and recipes, and I had no idea that I was talking to family. Does she know? I asked. Miss Tilda shook her head. I don't think so. If she did, she would have reached out by now. This note you got? That wasn't from Naomi. That was from someone else, someone who knows the truth and wanted to bring it to light. The old woman, I said. Maybe Delilah's mother, maybe an aunt, someone who's been carrying the secret and decided it was time to let it go. I stared at Naomi's picture, my husband's daughter, my son's half-sister. A woman I'd known casually for years without knowing who she really was. What do I do? I asked. You tell Leon, Miss Tilda said gently, and then you decide, together, how to approach her. I drove home in a daze. When I got there, Leon was sitting on the porch, waiting. He stood up when he saw me pull into the driveway. Marge, where have you been? I got out of the car, walked up the steps, and handed him the folder without saying a word. He opened it. His eyes scanned the documents, and then he saw the photo. His legs gave out. He sat down hard on the porch step, staring at that photo like he was looking at a miracle. That's her? He whispered. That's her. She looks like you. I know. He traced his finger over the photo. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Naomi, he said softly. Leon, there's something else. I know her.
2 days later, I couldn't take it anymore. The waiting, the not knowing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Naomi's face, my husband's daughter, my son's sister, a woman I'd served coffee to, smiled at, treated like a pleasant stranger when she was family all along. Leon wanted to go with me to the health office. I told him no, not yet. I needed to see her first, needed to understand what she knew before we walked into something we couldn't control. I showed up on a Tuesday morning, earlier than my usual volunteer shift. The office was quiet. A few people sat in the waiting area filling out forms. The receptionist recognized me and waved. Miss Marge, you're here early today. Just thought I'd come help out a bit, I said, forcing a smile. Naomi's in the back if you're looking for her. Storage room, I think. My heart hammered in my chest. Thanks. I walked down the narrow hallway, past offices and exam rooms, until I reached the storage area. The door was cracked open. I could see her inside, organizing boxes of donated medical supplies. She was humming something soft, gospel maybe. Her back was to me. I knocked lightly on the doorframe. She turned around, and when she saw me, her face lit up with that warm smile I'd seen so many times before. Miss Marge, I didn't know you were coming in today. Hi, Naomi. But something in my voice must have been off, because her smile faded slightly. Everything okay? I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. My hands were shaking. Naomi, I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to just listen. Can you do that? Her expression shifted, guarded now, cautious. Okay, she said slowly. I took a breath, then another. There was no easy way to say it. A few days ago, an old woman came to my house. She gave me a note about a secret that's been buried for 42 years. Naomi's face went pale. "What kind of note?" she whispered. "A note about a man named Leon Tillman, my husband, and a woman named Delilah Sharp." She stumbled backward, gripping the edge of a shelf to steady herself. "How do you—" Her voice broke. "How do you know about—" I said, "Because she came to my door, and I've been searching, and I found you." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. She pressed a hand to her mouth. "You're Leon's wife?" she breathed. "Yes. Then that means you're—" She couldn't finish. "I think I'm your stepmother," I said softly. She slid down to the floor, her back against the wall, and started crying, not loud, dramatic sobs, just quiet tears that broke my heart. I sat down beside her. We didn't speak for a long time, just sat there in that storage room, surrounded by boxes of bandages and donated supplies, trying to process what it meant that our lives had collided in the strangest way possible. Finally, she looked at me. "She told me you'd come," Naomi whispered. My chest tightened. "Who?" "My grandmother, Delilah's mother. She came to see me last week, told me everything. About Leon, about how my mother tried to tell him, but my grandparents wouldn't let her. About how they gave me—" That evening, Leon and I drove to Naomi's apartment. She'd given me her address at the health office before I left, telling me to come after 6 when she'd be home from work. The whole drive, Leon's leg bounced nervously. He kept running his hands over his face, sighing, starting to say something, and then stopping. I'd never seen him like this. Not at our wedding, not when our sons were born, not ever. "What if she doesn't want to know me?" he finally said as we pulled into her apartment complex. "Then we respect that," I told him. "But Leon, you need to give her the chance." We walked up to the second floor, apartment 2B. I knocked. When Naomi opened the door, Leon made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. She looked so much like him. It was impossible not to see it now. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," Leon whispered back. We stood there for a moment, all of us frozen. Then Naomi stepped aside. "Come in." Her apartment was small but tidy. Photos on the walls, books stacked on shelves, a cat curled up on the couch. It looked like a life carefully built by someone who'd learned to be self-sufficient. We sat down. The silence was heavy. "I don't know where to start," Leon finally said. His voice was thick with emotion. "Neither do I," Naomi replied. I watched them look at each other, watched Leon take in every detail of his daughter's face, watched Naomi study the man who was supposed to have been her father but never got the chance. "I'm sorry," Leon said suddenly. "I know I wasn't there. I know I should have tried harder to find you, but I swear to God, Naomi, I didn't know. Your mama never told me, and when I tried to find out, her family shut me out completely." "I know," Naomi said softly. "My grandmother told me everything. She told me how my mother's parents convinced her you wouldn't want a baby, that you'd leave her anyway. So she gave me up for adoption, thinking she was doing the right thing. But later, when she tried to tell you, they wouldn't let her reach you." Leon covered his face with his hands. "I would have been there. I would have been there for both of you." "I believe you," Naomi said. "And I'm not angry. Not at you. Maybe at my grandparents for lying. Maybe at the situation. But not at you." Leon looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. Can I hug you?" Naomi hesitated. Then she nodded. They stood up and embraced. Leon held his daughter like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. She held him back just as tightly, and I sat there watching, crying quietly, witnessing a reunion that should have happened 42 years ago. When they finally pulled apart, we all sat back down. There were so many questions, So much lost time to try to account for. Tell me about your life, Leon said. Tell me everything. She smiled a little. I had a good childhood. My adoptive parents loved me. They passed away a few years ago, but they gave me everything I needed. I went to college, became a nurse. I've always wanted to help people. Just like your old man, Leon said, his voice full of pride. I spent my whole life helping folks too. She smiled wider. I know. Ms. Marge told me, you fix things at the community center. I do what I can. They talked for over an hour about her job, about his, about the little things that made them similar. They both loved old jazz music, both preferred their coffee black, both had the same habit of humming when they were nervous. It was beautiful, painful, healing. But then Naomi's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it, and her face whole expression changed. Everything okay? I asked. She picked up the phone, read the message, and her hands started shaking. Naomi, Leon leaned forward. What is it? She looked up at us, and her face had gone pale. I've been seeing someone for about 6 months now. We met at the gym. He's kind, funny, smart. We've been taking things slow, but I really care about him. That's wonderful, Leon said, confused. But why does that complicate things? Naomi looked at me, then at Leon, her eyes filled with tears. Because his name is Terrell Tillman. The room went silent. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. What? I whispered. Terrell Tillman, she repeated. From Atlanta. He's here visiting family this month, and we've been spending a lot of time together. He told me about his parents, Marjorie and Leon, and I thought it was just a coincidence. I didn't know he was your brother, I finished, my voice barely audible. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't know. We had no idea. How could we have known? Leon stood up abruptly, pacing the small living room. No. Have you two? I couldn't even finish the question. We've kissed, Naomi said, covering her face. A few times, but nothing more. We were taking it slow because we both wanted to be sure. I thought I might be sick. My son, my firstborn, the baby I held in my arms 42 years ago, he was dating his own sister, and they had no idea. We have to tell him, I said, right now, before this goes any further.
Mom? Dad? Terrell stood in the doorway, his smile fading as he took in the scene. His parents sitting on his girlfriend's couch, his girlfriend's tear-stained face. The tension so thick, you could cut it with a knife. What's going on? He asked slowly. Come in, baby, I said, my voice shaking. We need to talk. He stepped inside, still holding those flowers, set them on the counter, looked between all of us. Naomi, what's wrong? Why are my parents here? She couldn't speak, just stood there with her hand over her mouth, crying. Leon stood up. Son, sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want someone to tell me what's happening. Terrell Trees, I said. Sit. He sat, but his leg was bouncing. His jaw was tight. He knew something was very wrong. I looked at Leon. He looked at me. Neither of us wanted to say it. Finally, Naomi spoke. Terrell, there's something about me you don't know. Something I just found out myself. Okay, he said carefully. I was adopted when I was a baby. I never knew my birth parents, but last week my grandmother came to see me. She told me about my biological father, his name, where he lived, everything. Terrell's eyes flicked to Leon, then back to Naomi. I watched his brain working, watched him start to piece it together. No, that's not... Terrell, please, I said. Sit. He sat, but his leg was bouncing.
His jaw was tight. He knew something was very wrong. I looked at Leon. He looked at me. Neither of us wanted to say it. Finally, Naomi spoke. Terrell, there's something about me you don't know. Something I just found out myself. Okay, he said carefully. I was adopted when I was a baby. I never knew my birth parents, but last week my grandmother came to see me. She told me about my biological father, his name, where he lived, everything. Terrell's eyes flicked to Leon, then back to Naomi. I watched his brain working, watched him start to piece it together. No, that's not. Terrell, please, I said, sit. He sat, but his leg was bouncing. His jaw was tight. He knew something was very wrong. I looked at Leon. He looked at me. Neither of us wanted to say it. Finally, Naomi spoke. Terrell, there's something about me you don't know. Something I just found out myself. Okay, he said carefully. I was adopted when I was a baby. I never knew my birth parents, but last week my grandmother came to see me. She told me about my biological father, his name, where he lived, everything. Terrell's eyes flicked to Leon, then back to Naomi. I watched his brain working, watched him start to piece it together. No, that's not. Terrell, Leon said gently. Naomi is my daughter. She's your half-sister. The flowers on the counter seemed to mock us. A gesture of affection that now meant nothing. Less than nothing. Terrell stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. You're lying. I wish I was, Leon said, his voice breaking. This is insane. Terrell ran his hands through his hair. We've been dating. He couldn't finish, couldn't say it out loud. We didn't know, Naomi said through tears. Terrell, I swear to God, we didn't know. He looked at her, really looked at her, and I watched the exact moment it hit him. The resemblance he'd probably noticed before but dismissed. The way her smile looked like someone in his family. The small mannerism she had that mirrored his father's. Oh God, he whispered. Then he turned and walked out the door. Terrell, wait! I called after him. But he was already gone. I heard his footsteps pounding down the stairs, heard his car door slam, heard the engine roar to life and tires squeal as he drove away. Naomi collapsed on the couch, sobbing. Leon sat down beside her, his own face wet with tears. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry this happened. It's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault, but God, how do we come back from this? I didn't have an answer. None of us did. We sat there for a long time. Eventually, Naomi called in sick for work for the next day. Leon and I went home, but neither of us could sleep. The lawyer handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in shaky handwriting. Underneath it said, to be opened with Leon, Terrell, and Naomi present. I called Naomi, asked her to come over. When she arrived, we all sat in the living room. Me, Leon, Terrell, Naomi, and Winston, who'd driven up from Maryland after I finally told him what was happening. Both my sons sat on opposite sides of the room from Naomi, not out of anger, out of discomfort, out of the awkwardness of not knowing how to be family with someone you'd had feelings for. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a letter written on thin-lined paper. The handwriting was difficult to read in places, but the words were clear enough. I read it out loud. My name is Ruth Sharp. I am Delilah's mother and Naomi's grandmother. By the time you read this, I will be gone. I wanted to wait until I knew I was dying to tell the truth, because I am a coward. I have been a coward my entire life. 42 years ago, my daughter Delilah fell in love with Leon Tillman. He was a good man, kind, hardworking,
But he was poor, and my husband and I thought Delilah deserved better. When she told us she was pregnant, we panicked. We convinced her that Leon would leave her, that he wasn't ready to be a father, that she'd be better off giving the baby up for adoption. She believed us because she was young and scared and didn't know what else to do. After Naomi was born, Delilah gave her to a good family, but it destroyed her. She cried for months. She stopped eating. She stopped living. 6 months later, she told us she wanted to find Leon, wanted to tell him the truth. She said he had a right to know, but my husband forbade it. He said it would only make things worse, that Leon had probably moved on, that bringing him back into the picture would ruin everyone's lives. So we kept the secret. Delilah never recovered. She moved away, met another man, tried to build a new life, but she never stopped mourning the daughter she gave away and the man she loved. She passed away last month. Before she died, The days that followed were strange, quiet, heavy. Naomi started coming over for dinner once a week. At first, it was awkward. Nobody knew quite how to act. Terrell barely spoke. Winston tried to fill the silence with small talk that didn't land. Leon watched Naomi like he was still trying to convince himself she was real. But slowly, over weeks and then months, we found our rhythm. Naomi told us stories about her adoptive parents, how they'd loved her fiercely, how they'd told her she was chosen, not abandoned. Leon listened to every word, grateful that his daughter had been raised by good people even if he couldn't be there himself. Terrell eventually came around. It took time. Therapy helped. He told me later that the hardest part wasn't the loss of the relationship. It was the embarrassment, the shame of having feelings for someone who turned out to be his sister. I feel like I should have known somehow, like there should have been some biological warning system. Life doesn't work that way, baby, I told him. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did Naomi. I know, but it still feels wrong. That's because it is wrong, but not because of anything you did. It's wrong because adults made decisions 42 years ago that set all of this in motion. You and Naomi are just the ones who had to live with the consequences. He nodded, didn't say anything else. But I could see him starting to forgive himself. Naomi and Terrell had a conversation eventually, a real one. They agreed to be family. Just family. Nothing more. And while it was painful, while there was grief for what could have been in another life, they both knew it was the right choice. Winston handled it better than anyone. He welcomed Naomi into the family without hesitation, told her he'd always wanted a sister, made jokes to ease the tension. He was the bridge between all of us, the one who reminded us that family isn't just blood, it's choice. Leon changed the most. He became softer, more present. He started talking about his feelings in a way he never had before. He told me one night, lying in bed, that losing Naomi once had broken him, but getting her back, even under these circumstances, had healed something in him he didn't know was broken. I'm grateful, he said. I know that sounds strange given everything that's happened, but I'm grateful we found her. Grateful we know the truth. Grateful she's part of our lives now. I took his hand. Me too. We had a family dinner 6 months after everything came out. All of us together. Me, Leon, Terrell, Winston, and Naomi. We laughed. We told stories. We passed dishes around the table and argued playfully about who made the best cornbread. And for the first time in months, it felt normal. Not perfect. Not without its complicated history, but normal. Before Naomi left that night, she hugged me at the door. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not shutting me out, for letting me be part of this family even though I complicated everything." I pulled back and looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who looked like my husband, who carried his mannerisms and his kindness,
who had been part of our family all along without any of us knowing. You didn't complicate anything. Life did that all on its own. You just gave us a chance to make it right." She smiled through tears, hugged me again. Then she left, and I closed the door, knowing that while our family would never be traditional, it was finally whole.
Here's what I learned through all of this. Secrets don't protect the people we love. They poison them. Slowly, quietly, from the inside out. Ruth Sharp thought she was protecting her daughter by keeping Leon away. She thought she was protecting Naomi by giving her to a better family. She thought silence was safety. But all she did was create a wound that festered for 42 years, a wound that eventually infected everyone it touched. The truth always comes out, always. You can bury it, ignore it, run from it, but one day it will knock on your door. And when it does, you have two choices. You can face it, or you can let it destroy you. We chose to face it. Was it painful? Yes. Was it messy and complicated and harder than anything we'd ever been through? Absolutely. But we survived it. And more than that, we grew from it. My family is bigger now, more complicated, but also more honest. We don't hide from hard conversations anymore. We don't pretend everything is fine when it's not. We talk, we listen, we forgive. And that's made all the difference. If you're watching this and you're carrying a secret, something you're afraid will hurt the people you love if it comes out, I'm telling you now, let it out. Tell the truth. Give the people in your life a chance to handle it. Yes, it might hurt. Yes, it might change things, but it won't destroy you. Not if you face it together. Secrets kept in the dark grow into monsters, but truth brought into the light? That's where healing begins. My husband's daughter was a stranger for 42 years. Now she's family. My son went through heartbreak I never wanted for him, but he came out stronger. We all did. So whatever you're hiding, whatever you're afraid of, bring it into the light before it's too late. Before someone else has to deliver the truth for you. Before the knock on the door comes and changes everything. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? I read every single one. Thanks for staying with me through this journey. My name is Marjorie Tillman, and this is my truth.